The Shadowed World Beyond. Part 1. An Ordinary Life. Peter had always been an unassuming man, living a life of routine and predictability. He worked as an accountant at a small local firm in his hometown, diligently crunching numbers and balancing budgets day in and day out. He took solace in the stability of his life, content with the simplicity it offered. Every day he woke up at exactly 6 a.m., sipped his coffee from the same cafe, and spent his evenings either watching TV shows or immersed in a book. He had a few close friends, but for the most part, Peter kept to himself. There was, however, an ever-present feeling that something was missing in his life. Peter couldn't quite put his finger on it, but he longed for a sense of adventure, something to break the monotonous cycle of his existence. But he dismissed this feeling, convincing himself that he was happy with the life he had built. Part 2. The Sickness. One fateful day, while sitting at his desk, Peter began to feel a strange, sickly sensation coursing through his body. It started as a mild discomfort like the onset of the flu, but it quickly escalated into a debilitating weakness that left him unable to focus on his work. Concerned for his well-being, Peter decided to leave the office early and return home to rest. His apartment, a small, cozy space that he had meticulously organized and decorated, offered him solace. Peter crawled into his bed, hoping that a good night's sleep would rid him of the strange ailment plaguing him. He drifted off into an uneasy slumber, his dreams filled with vivid, unsettling images of a world beyond his imaginations. Part 3. The Awakening. When Peter awoke, he found himself in a bizarre, alien landscape. The sky above him was a swirling mass of purples and blues, dotted with unfamiliar constellations. The ground beneath him was covered in a strange, spongy moss that seemed to pulsate with every step he took. He was surrounded by twisted trees with blackened bark, their branches reaching out like grasping hands. Interspersed among the darkness were luminescent plants that cast a haunting glow across the terrain. Peter quickly realized that he was no longer on Earth, and the panic began to set in. As he stumbled through this foreign world, he couldn't shake the eerie feeling that he was being watched. He caught glimpses of strange creatures lurking in the shadows, their forms obscured by the darkness. They seemed to be following him, always just out of sight but never too far away. Part 4. The Journey. Over the course of several days, Peter explored the alien world, driven by a desperate need to find a way back home. Despite the overwhelming fear that gripped him, he couldn't help but be mesmerized by the otherworldly beauty that surrounded him. The landscape was a surreal blend of the grotesque and the sublime, evoking a sense of awe and terror in equal measure. During his journey, Peter encountered numerous obstacles that tested his resolve. He found himself trapped in a labyrinthine forest, the twisted trees closing in around him, their branches reaching out like gnarled fingers. He was nearly crushed by a massive, shifting boulder that seemed to move with a mind of its own. And at one point, he narrowly avoided a torrential downpour of acidic rain that burned through everything it touched. Despite these challenges, Peter also experienced a fleeting moment of solace. He discovered a small, crystalline pond that glowed with an ethereal light. As he drank from the pond, he felt a sense of tranquility wash over him, offering him a brief respite from the unrelenting terror that haunted his journey. It was a small beacon of hope in a world that seemed determined to break his spirit. Part 5. The Confrontation. As the days wore on, Peter's strength began to wane. Exhaustion, hunger, and despair gnawed at him, and he could feel himself succumbing to the harsh reality of his new environment. Throughout it all, the shadowy creatures continued to follow him, never revealing themselves but always maintaining a menacing presence. In a moment of desperation, Peter finally attempted to communicate with the enigmatic beings. He pleaded with them for help, his voice cracking with emotion as he begged them to guide him back to his world. But the creatures remained silent, their intentions inscrutable. Part 6. The Collapse. Eventually, Peter's body could no longer bear the strain of his ordeal. He collapsed to the ground, his energy reserves depleted and his spirit broken. It was then that the creatures finally emerged from the shadows, revealing themselves in all their terrifying glory. They were massive, elephantine beings with thick, leathery skin that shimmered with an iridescent sheen. Their heads were crowned with gnarled horns that spiraled into the sky, and their eyes gleamed with an otherworldly intelligence. As they surrounded Peter, their intentions became clear. They had been waiting for him to reach his breaking point, and now they moved in for the kill. Part 7. The Ambiguity. In that moment, as the creatures closed in on him, something within Peter stirred. An unyielding will to survive, a primal instinct that had been buried deep within him, suddenly rose to the surface. He summoned the last of his strength and made a desperate attempt to escape the clutches of his pursuers. Did he manage to evade their grasp and find a way back to Earth, or did he succumb to the relentless darkness of this alien world? The answer remains shrouded in mystery, leaving the door open for a potential continuation of Peter's harrowing journey, so stay tuned for Part 2.